Hello there, I'm Rev Nhien, founder of Evolving Enneagram. If you've been seeking a compassion-based, contemplative approach to Enneagram-informed transformation, you are certainly in the right place. This is where contemplation meets the Enneagram. We are now in week 5 of a 12-week Sunday talk series based on the theme, The Care of the Soul. And throughout these weeks, I'm drawing insights and inspirations from my new book, The Enneagram of the Soul, a 40-day spiritual companion for the 9 types. Today in the United States, it's May 11th, and it is Mother's Day. So my talk is inspired by this theme. The talk is titled Mothering Ourselves, Mothering in Community, the Voice for Love by Enneagram Type. I'm going to take today's talk in 3 parts. In part 1, I'll share some personal reflections on motherhood. In part 2, I'll talk about our need for collective mothering, or more aptly put, remothering. And in part 3, I'll share activations from day 26 of my book, inviting you to look at self-care, which is the theme for that day, from this broader perspective, namely that self-care and community care are not separate. I'll give you suggestions by Enneagram type then related to that self, maybe with the larger S, care. So with that, let us begin. So I'd like to begin with some personal reflections on motherhood and mothering. So this morning, I woke up before my partner did, and I went to the room next door, which is our entertainment room, a small room with an east-facing window. So before I just like launched into work, I wanted to just sit and contemplate for a few moments. And so I sat there and I just let the light of the morning sun just start to like wash over me. It was just so beautiful, and like I could feel just this gentle like warmth as the sun hit my skin. And like this was a way that I'm different from how I used to be. This is a way in which I pause to check in with myself. And it struck me as I noted to myself, oh, yes, today is Mother's Day. Today is Mother's Day. That in that moment, my mind immediately started to go pretty quickly to what's expected of me. Okay, you get the mind's like getting ready to work here already. It's like, okay, social media, as a minister, it's important for me to note, not just like to wish people a happy Mother's Day, but to honor and take note of people who might be struggling today. And that felt important to me. And of course, I felt like, oh, I need to send a note to my mother and who is still alive, and to my sisters who are mothers, and my sister-in-law, and to my friends who are mothers. And so all these things came up, there were plans with my mother-in-love, who is my boyfriend's mother, but we're not married, so that's what I call her. And so immediately, regarding Mother's Day, I started again thinking about what I should do, what the expectations are. And notably, what was different, so that piece wasn't different. That's been with me my whole life. What was different is that after that, I stopped and I asked myself, but what about you, Nhien? How are you feeling about today? How are you relating to Mother's Day? So I'll stop and I'll ask you the same question. How are you, apart from what you think you should be doing or feeling, or maybe even should be receiving from others because you're a mother? Like, what are you actually feeling in relationship to motherhood? Whether, whatever gender, whatever sex, you are, like this question is like, how do you relate to this? And so my answer my answer, the first thing I thought about was that I am not a biological mom. And not only am I not, but as of the last few years, I've come to a place where physically, biologically, I can't be a mom. And so there's definitely been some grief for me in that like realization of there being this part of our shared like human experience for those who are born female, right? That I will never take part in. And so that was there. And then I started to think about how sweet and precious it has been the few times throughout my life where really unbidden by me, like the topic wasn't even like on the table, where people would just say things like, oh my gosh, I think you would be a great mother. And not in a way that was pressuring, but more of like almost like a way of saying you're so kind or gentle or nurturing. Or like watching the way I am with children. That comment has come up. And then additionally, there are people a decade or two older than me in our community who have shared either individually or at group level that like you're like our mother, I mean, that like you have this mothering holding of the group. And I've always received those comments with joy and gratitude and a sense of tenderness of like, wow, that's really cool. And the funny thing is, as I was thinking this, I got a message, a text from a member of our Evolving Enneagram community saying, I see you as a mother. And this person is, I don't know, 20 years older than me. And it's so, so lovely. And I know this was a way of sending love across the way for me. But I say this to say that this notion of being nurturing and gentle and almost like this sense of being someone who might be good with kids is relatively new in my life. As you know, like as a stern lawyer, this was far from what I even aspired to be. But the spiritual journey, the journey of awakening to love, has changed me. And in that change, I realize, and I have to be really careful speaking here, my mother is alive. And I know people who are grieving the loss of their mothers. And yet there's a part of me that is like, oh, is there a place for me here where there's as giving and self-sacrificing as my own mother has been, the ways in which she's reliable in ways that I don't even see other mothers being, the way that I know that if anything really happened to me, I could go to her. These are gifts of my actual mother. There's still this place in me that's like, oh, and there are things that I wish, right? There are things that I wished my mother showed up with that felt like things that I needed to nurture my my coming into being, if you will. And this journey of opening up to love, to self-compassion and self-care, I came to a time where I started giving myself what I needed from my mother. I mean, both parents really, but today I want to talk about motherhood, right? So, what I needed, like a tenderness of being. My mom sincerely believed that if she critiqued me, that I would not arrive into the world spoiled, right? That I would know to work hard, that I wouldn't be too prideful. And looking back and realizing my threeness, I was like, I kind of withered under that critique. Like it didn't cause me to blossom. Like I spent a lot of time really in a place of insecurity and self-doubt with low self-esteem. And throughout these years, I have been remothering myself, right? So in two ways. One is through the Enneagram, learning to receive the gifts of her mothering. Like 10 years ago, I've been like, she didn't give me anything. She didn't help at all, like, and I was like, oh no, that has changed. It's like I can more fully receive the differences, like in like the ways that she sought to give, even when it didn't like fully match the pieces that I needed. And at the same time, I understand that I was focused on the pieces that I was missing, but not the pieces that I had that she gave, right? So all those things are coming together. But over the years, like instead of task mastering myself, instead of disapproving of myself in order to motivate myself, there are things that felt more nurturing for me that I've begun to adopt. And then I noticed that as I genuinely embody these things, I am naturally giving it to others in the community. Like I can't give what I haven't received. I can't give what I'm not. And so this is the core of this personal share that I want to offer to you from someone who did really think like, oh, I can't love myself. If I love myself, I won't improve. I won't grow, and to find the opposite, to find that I can love myself into being in a way that has transformed me so much more than any critique has ever done. Right. And so that's my invitation to you after considering your relationship to mothering, to really take a look at how you today can incorporate some of the things that you needed in terms of a motherly presence and energy that you can now offer to yourself. And so, with that, I'm going to take us into part two, where we're going to explore how self-care and community care are intertwined. So, part two. I want to remind you that last week's suggested reading included Principles 5 and 6. Principle 5 is entitled We Inter Are, and Principle 6 is titled We Cannot Awaken in Isolation. So, too often, especially in our Western world, we see inner work as something that's about attempting to improve our separate selves, like better ourselves, if you will, fix ourselves, get ourselves out of a rut, right? And I want to say that there isn't anything intrinsically bad about doing this. Like the desire for my or your personal healing doesn't make you selfish or bad. In fact, I think it's part of our natural desire for wholeness, right? That there's an impulse in us for a sense of knowing our wholeness. So, in my view, this desire for me and my awakening is not bad. It's simply misguided, because it starts from a foundation that I don't believe is true, which is that we are separate. So how about this idea that the attempt to improve our separate selves never resolves or works or ends up in peace because we're not actually separate? What if we're not? What if we're not independent? So this work of self-improvement then can actually lead us further and further away from a sense of wholeness rather than helping us to get there. And you might have seen this, if not in yourself, then in others, where you feel like there is this like belly button gazing, this navel gazing that begins to happen, and people just continue on this like personal improvement program, right? It can be almost like addictive, but they don't find more peace. They just find another thing that they have to do or should do, the next new teaching or the next new workshop, but ones that come from a place of lack, of like you need more rather than you are okay as you are, right? So starting from a different premise, what if self-care, and I'm going to go back and bring this back to this notion of self-mothering, what if self-care took a broader view? So when we're thinking of like self-mothering, we don't only think of ourselves, but at the same time, we do not exclude ourselves, right? That's key. So this body of nurturing, if we were to embody the qualities that we felt could help us to thrive, like little chicks in a nest, and what is needed for us to fly, like what is that for you? And to consider that as you truly embrace these things, these qualities of being, that you gift these into the world. And as you gift them into your world, holding a gentler, more nurturing, or more tender uh, gaze, that it creates a feedback loop so that the world becomes a more compassionate and loving and nurturing space. So, I write in my book, compassion and acceptance from ourselves and from others are so vital to our development. We desperately need safe spaces among people who are also devoted to this work, with whom we can interact regularly to practice operating outside the respective idealizations of our types in a deliberate and committed way. This is especially true given that we are likely to face an internal backlash when we stray from our type structure. Often we can experience resistance within our relationships as well. Even the most well-intentioned friends, coworkers, and family members may feel threatened as we refuse to show up in old habitual ways that no longer serve our highest good. In an Enneagram literate conscious community, we get it. If you are a 2 who is practicing saying no for the first time, a 9 who is struggling to assert yourself, a 7 who is learning to stop running and to grieve for the first time, a 4 beginning to embrace authentic joy, a 3 or an 8 who is practicing slowing down, a 1 or a 6 who is opening to more spontaneity and play, or a 5 who is learning to embrace the messiness of expressing feelings. When we undertake Enneagram inner work while we are engaged in community, we can clearly and compassionately witness that what feels most foreign or difficult to embody can be vastly different by type. For our healing and transformation, we need community spaces that are not just safe, but brave. Spaces where others' modeling of authenticity, vulnerability, and courage can continue to inspire our own. In such communities, individuals, including servant leaders, are earnestly engaged in the work of relating to themselves, each other, and the larger world from a place beyond their habitual and unconscious patterns. Community members actively consider their type when relating to other people both inside and outside the community. Ultimately, it is not just a community of people that is needed to support individual healing, but as pointed out in Principle 5 of my book, our wholeness is by nature communal. Thus, our healing is inseparable from the healing of the community. Ultimately, the global interspecies community. I'm going to quote from certified Enneagram professional Abby Robbins, who says it so well in The Conscious Enneagram. Wholeness, in the ultimate sense, is not merely about us as individuals, but is about what we can experience as we grow in community and connection with one another. Learning to hear other voices and perspectives, learning to love all the infinite differences that are between us, while understanding that we are intricately connected. This is the kind of wholeness our Enneagram work is really inviting us into. We are finite beings and will always have limitations to what we can see, experience, and understand. That is exactly why we need community. By being in community with another finite being who sees, experiences, and understands things differently than we do, we get to experience more. We can only experience our true wholeness in community. This experience of true wholeness starts in our conscious community. So, with that, let's move into part 3. So, when we consider self mothering, what I consider self care, let's take this in a larger context. Because again, I am positive that my ability to be a nurturing presence for my one-on-one clients in our community, holding space for the repeated habits of type in a way that allows something more to emerge, I'm confident that has arisen because of the increased softness that I've been able to bring to myself. And guess how I began to bring that softness to myself? Because there are others who came before me, who modeled, who wrote about it, who taught, who supported this different way. I was remothered, right? And then I was able to remother myself through these invitations because I didn't know there was another path than task mastering myself into submission, into obedience, into discipline. And I could have told you, I would have definitely told you 20 years ago that I was like, if you don't beat yourself up, you're not going to be any better. Like, and so I need to constantly beat myself up, right? I mean, I was like that when it came to my weight. I had weight issues and I was like, and guess what? The journey of self-compassion and self-love has kept my weight down more than the journey of continually beating myself up because I would go off my diet, which I was doing all the time in the first 30 years of my life, right? I love the word nurturing now. I mean, it has real meaning for me, and on Mother's Day in particular. So I want to invite you to consider that whether it is because you are taking the modeling from your mother or the mother figures in your life, from your early life, or maybe you're new to this idea of like, what? We can be kind and we can be gentle with ourselves. And this is like what's happening for you now, or even via today's talk. I really invite you to consider this path. This is the path of compassion that I'm talking about every week, right? It has femininity in it. It has this quality of like softness in it, in its approach. It is like a nest, right? That kind of can encircle you, that says, even that, even your failing today, even your lack of willpower, somehow holding the space allows for belonging. And here is the tricky piece that I want to invite you to consider, that as I write in activation day 26, and that is on page 157 and 158, it's very important as we consider self-mothering to consider or to really discern the difference between self-indulgence and self-care, right? I mean, we even know this when we see mothering that uh, indulges like a child's desires in a way that isn't life affirming, right? And so that's kind of my clue. And this is, I'm sharing these words from day 26 activation here. Certainly, we may have seen others go the way of hedonism, addiction, and self-indulgence in a manner that hurts not only themselves, but others around them. So how can you best tell the difference between self-indulgence and self-care? One of the key components I've seen in my pastoral care work, as well as in my consulting work, supporting family and professional caregivers, is that authentic self-care is restorative and life-giving. When we experience it, we are inclined to show up with more presence and compassion in our lives for ourselves and others. authentic self-care, then that's a clue. And that's why, yes, it's so cliche to say, oh, self-care is like a bubble bath, right? It might not be for you. It might be on a certain day, but like that limited notion, right? Or even for some of us who are like, oh, I deserve all those desserts that are going to put me in a coma because I work so hard. And maybe on a certain day that might be the thing to do that allows you some sort of relief and release from a lot of diligence, but maybe not. If you're noticing that there's a pattern of self-care activities that actually puts you out of the game even more, puts you in a withdrawn or isolated state that doesn't cause you to connect more with life, right? It isn't life affirming, right? Or inspiring or energizing, then that might be a clue. So what I've noticed is it's like we love ourselves into being. We speak words of encouragement into our being. We are tender with our mistakes in a way that actually activates something that is love affirming and life affirming. And so it is with that that I invite you to consider these words for each type. For type 1, today I practice taking myself and others less seriously. I bring a sense of perspective, lightness, and good humor to my day. Type 2. Today, I practice self-affirmation by making space to honor my more challenging emotions. I accept that it's okay for me to not feel okay. Type 3. Today, I practice self-care by focusing on recreation and enjoyment rather than discipline and self-improvement. Type 4. Today, I cherish myself by being self-starting and disciplined rather than indulging my moods in a way that is self-defeating. Type 5. Today, I honor my needs for connection by initiating physical or emotional contact with a friend or loved one. Type 6. Today, I practice gratitude for my physical body, whatever its present condition. I visualize myself as strong and grounded. Type 7. Today, I practice savoring every morsel and every moment, gently bringing my attention back to the present whenever I find it has strayed. Type 8. Today, I remember to pause before adding more to my plate. I discern which actions truly support my highest dreams and core values. Type 9. Today, I make healthful choices that energize me physically, emotionally, and mentally. On the topic of self-care being different from self-indulgence, I'd like to share a quote from Kristen Neff. I found in my research, she writes, that the biggest reason people aren't more self-compassionate is that they are afraid they'll become self-indulgent. They believe self-criticism is what keeps them in line. Most people have gotten it wrong because our culture says being hard on yourself is the way to be. So today, on Mother's Day, I'd like to invite a self-mothering practice that, especially if you are in our contemplative practices in the Enneagram groups, to explore, to experiment with this week, to initiate or deepen, depending on where you are in your journey. And then perhaps you're like, oh, I've been on this journey for a while, right? Notice how your presence in relationship to others can also offer this mothering. But don't do that without including yourself. Please, that's the practice. So this morning, I actually wrote a poem, but it was inspired by my reflections this morning and this theme of how mothering energy, this feminine energy can transform our world, but first, ourselves. This poem is called Birthing Song. Sing blessings to the mothers whose love pitter-patters in the dark like an unspoken nursery rhyme that carries the stink of diapers and the unsung melody of love. Sing, morning lark, sing blessings to the women like me. Can I bless myself, who will never be mothers, and the mothers who will never be enough in their own stinging eyes? Sing blessings for those who cry for their mothers, who weep like morning wind through clanging chimes because of their mother's inherited pain, who sleep like gentle breeze because someone once mothered them well enough to break the ancestral chain of 1,000 unlived lives. Please take off your aprons, grab your pots and pans, and sing with me of the morning when we will eat a different breakfast food. Sing song thrushes, skylarks, robins, and blackbirds, and build a nest of prayer with me. Join the chorus for a new dawn of divine love, and mothers we will all be together, because beyond all worldly mothers, we will together be the womb that births the love the whole world needs. Namaste.